Ralph, thanks for joining us here at the Gospel Partnerships. You're planning to plant a church in Manchester. What's the vision for that church?
It's a joint venture between two Liverpool-based churches. We're looking to plant into the city centre of Manchester a church which is seeking to reach those who live, work or study in the city centre. So it's a large group of those who are involved in city centre life that we're seeking to reach with the gospel.
And why plant in Manchester?
Well, Manchester is a large city. It's the third largest city in the UK, and it's rapidly growing. The last census showed that Manchester had grown by 19% between 2001 and 2011. So it's a huge city in its own right, but it also punches above its weight in terms of influence. It has 95,000 students there in Manchester across 4 universities, and they're all in a 1.5 mile radius, which makes it one of the most dense student populations in the country. On top of that, it's got a huge media influence with the relocation of BBC North to Salford Quays. There's a huge amount of media outlets, and what goes on in Manchester really resonates around the UK and around the world. So it's a very important city in terms of influence. As a city, it's short on gospel-centred Bible-teaching churches. There are a number of churches in the south of Manchester, but the north of Manchester, west, is poorly represented, and particularly the city centre, and so we want to make a difference there.
And what difference will being in the city centre make to church life?
One of the churches we're coming from is Egberth Community Church, which has been in the Gospel Partnerships before. That was very much a local community church that focused on a residential community in the city centre of Manchester. There are a number of people who live there, but also many more who work in the city centre or have their main sphere of social life in the city centre. And we're looking to reach all those 3 different groups, both those who live there, those who work there, and those who study there. Because that's where people are found. That's where many people spend most of their lives, even if they're not living in those places. So we want to be seeing those Christians living there, growing their knowledge and love of Jesus as they're built up through the teaching of God's word. But we also want to be equipping and helping people to reach those they spend most time with the gospel. So we're looking to equip people to be reaching out to those they're working with, those they're living with, those they're spending time with in the city centre.
I assume you're not planting the church on your own. How are you getting a team together?
Well, we've drawn our team so far from a number of places. We have 17 adults and 6 children in the team so far. A large number of those have come from Liverpool, from Egberth Community Church and Christ Church Liverpool. There are also a number of people on the ground in Manchester who we already knew who wanted to see a city centre church started, and so they're part of our team. Manchester is short of Bible-teaching churches and short of Christians at the moment who are really gospel-centred. So one of the things we don't want to do is just reshuffle the pack of existing Manchester churches. So we'd love to grow the team through 2 main ways, through seeing people saved and brought into the church, but also seeing people move into Manchester. If you're in a big city centre church, you see a huge turnover of people each year who are leaving because they're relocating to a different city. And we'd love people to think about moving not just to get a promotion or a job elsewhere, but moving for good gospel reasons and deciding to apply to jobs in Manchester in order to be involved in what we're seeking to do. We want people to share our vision and want to get involved. So we'd love to grow the team that way. Come next year, we'd love to be about 30 adults. We think that'd be a great sized team to start with.
So this year, are you on holiday? What are your plans?
It's not quite a year off. It's quite busy, really. I guess because we're planting from 2 Liverpool churches, we realise we need to understand Manchester well. You can't just go in and assume you know how to plant a church when you don't know the local community. So it was a deliberate decision to send me ahead of the team to spend a year getting to know Manchester, understanding what's going on there already, getting to know the community in Manchester, getting to know non-Christians, understanding how we can fulfil our aims as a church. So that's a main part of what I'm doing. We also already have 11 people there in Manchester as part of the core team, so I'm working with them midweek. We're doing studies in Mark's Gospel together and thinking through how are we going to be understanding the Gospel ourselves and then sharing it with those we are working with and living amongst. So really being outward focused from the off. Another part of what I'm doing this year is travelling around and visiting like-minded city centre churches. Trying to glean their wisdom, seeing how they have tried to fulfil similar aims to us in different cities they're working in, and also raising the profile of what we're seeking to do. We'd love for people to be praying for us. We'd love for people to be thinking about giving financially to support the church plant in the first few years. And we'd also love people to consider joining us. So one of the things I'm doing is going around raising the profile of what we're doing and seeking to encourage people to support us in those ways.
I know at the heart of the church are reach, grow, send. How can a church that doesn't even exist yet think about sending?
Yeah, I think we know that we have a responsibility for gospel work, not just locally in Manchester City Centre, but we really want to have a bigger vision for Manchester as a whole, and indeed for our whole region in the northwest. It seems to us there are large patches of Manchester and the northwest which are just woefully short of gospel-centred Bible-teaching churches, and we want to play a role alongside other Manchester-based churches and other churches in the Northwest Partnership in seeing churches planted into those areas. I sometimes said that church plants should be born pregnant, and that's our desire. We want to be planting City Church Manchester with a view to planting again, and we already have plans for that. We'd love to see a church planted into Salford Quays 5 years from when we launch, and that's the sort of vision we're starting with, because we see that as an area of gospel need, and we'd love to serve that need in the near future.
Ralph, thanks for joining us here at the Gospel Partnerships.
Thanks so much for having me.